What's up, everybody? Good morning. Good early morning. I again decided not to, well, I didn't really decide to not post a wrap-up video last night so much as I fell asleep, and by the time I woke up, there was no point in posting a video. And honestly, just to go ahead and not bury the lead here, yesterday was really, really slow free agency wise. The Seahawks did one thing that was pretty irrelevant. Like what they did was fine, don't get me wrong, but I don't really have anything to say about it. We signed a backup linebacker that Mike McDonald likes to have around, but it's unlikely that he's going to do anything more than be a special teamer. And there is certainly value to being a special teamer, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I can really talk about that much. It's not something that really changes the direction of the team. So there really wasn't that much to wrap up anyway. This video is powered by BetUS, by the way. I do, however, want to go ahead and make a quick video wrapping things up outside of the free agency stuff. Because even if I were to kind of be a little more broad, even if I were to try to talk about what happened league wide, not a lot went on. Honestly, I can count the number of players I was even mildly interested in signing as a Seahawks fan on one hand who actually got signed. It was very, very slow. Like Liam Eichenberg, I think, got re-signed by the Dolphins. There might have been a couple of special teams guys and maybe backup safety types that went, but it was very, very sparse. And I'm hoping today's at least a little more active so we have more to talk about. But while the Seahawks didn't really do anything, I would argue they didn't really lose out on anything. So I'm not upset about any of that, right? It's not like I saw a bunch of guys I really like coming off the board. Most of my top guys are still there. In fact, I'd say that none of them really came off the board yesterday. So we'll see what happens today, if anything. Hopefully, we at least get some league activity. That would be preferable to nothing. And by the end of today, I'm hoping I kind of at least have a general sense of how to feel rather than being kind of stuck in this limbo of not knowing if we're going to address the offensive line and just kind of muddling through until we get to the point where everything is gone. But realistically, I know that it's very likely we're going to be stuck in this limbo for a little bit longer because it's an arbitrary cutoff date, right? Like free agency goes on and on and on. It doesn't end at any particular given time. And there are players that are at least somewhat desirable that are probably going to remain free agents until after June. That's how this works. So we'll see what happens later today. The two things that happened yesterday that were kind of interesting were number one, we had a Sam Darnold press conference, the first Seahawks Sam Darnold press conference. And then we also had a little interview with John Schneider talking about the trades last week. And I don't feel like going into the chapter and verse of either of those things. The Sam Darnold press conference was mostly just kind of awkward. He doesn't seem like he's very good at the whole public speaking thing. He didn't sound very confident. I think that people that want to play like word detective kind of felt like Kubiak and McDonald weren't thrilled, but playing word detective is kind of generally not a very good idea anyway. You end up falling into a lot of things that you shouldn't fall into. So I'm not going to bother doing that. I don't really have much to say about the press conference. It was a press conference. Sam Darnold is here, and public speaking doesn't seem to be his calling in life. Before I go any further, though, I want to tell you about my friends over at BetUS. Not only does BetUS have a great sports book, they also have a great online casino. If you like slots, if you like blackjack, if you like live casino dealers, get on over to BetUS and take advantage of their sign-up bonus. It's a 200% sign-up bonus up to $5,000 or 250% for a crypto sign-up bonus up to $5,000. So in between laying down your sports bets, check out the casino. They've got all the stuff that you could want in an online casino. Give them a shot, get your free money, and get to some gambling. All right, so the Darnold thing is it was just something that happened, and I don't necessarily feel like we learned that much from it. And you wouldn't really expect to learn that much from it other than the fact that Sam Darnold actually exists and he actually is a Seahawk. which we knew anyway. The John Schneider comments were, I'd say, a little more interesting, but again, I don't feel like going into chapter and verse on it because it doesn't really matter that much at this point because, the trades happened, the direction the team took happened, and anything that John Schneider says is subject to be believed or not believed, and we're all going to have to muddle through these whatever anybody says and come to our own interpretations and understandings of what actually happened. To roughly break down what he said, he basically indicated that he didn't want to trade Geno Smith or DK Metcalf, and that things broke down for reasons that were outside him just not wanting him here. And honestly, as near as I could tell, some of the stuff he said was almost like a third interpretation when it came to the Geno Smith thing in particular. Like, listening to what he had to say, it almost felt like he was trying to take the middle ground between Albert Breer and Bob Condotta, and he was kind of saying like, no, I made this offer, so I did want to have him, and he was trying to indicate that he did make a significant offer to him, more than Albert Breer, but it seemed like it was a little bit less than what Condotta suggested. And unlike the Condotta report, he said that Geno didn't request a trade. What he described was they made an offer, Geno made no counteroffer, but he didn't request a trade, and then they just decided to quickly trade him. So I don't know how to feel about that. It feels like it's almost like I feel like I'm watching a Kurosawa movie. I feel like I'm watching Rashomon or something. We're seeing three different interpretations of the same event. Almost, I feel like this is like the third interpretation. Almost, it feels like we're watching maybe like The Last Jedi or whatever movie reference you want to make. There are a couple more out there that would be pretty good. But I think you guys get what I'm saying. Or maybe you're not a nerd like me and you don't know movies, so maybe you don't. But the point I'm trying to make is it seems like we're getting three different interpretations of this story, and only one of them can be true, or none of them can be true, or all three of them can have pieces of it that are true. And we're going to be forced to just kind of figure out which one we believe in. And we also have to be aware of the fact that our beliefs could easily be wrong, and we will never know what actually factually happened because it's impossible to know what actually factually happened. But the if I were to comment on anything specific that Schneider said, again, I don't feel like going into it too much because it doesn't change the bottom line, and I'm kind of tired of trying to, slice through this stuff. Um, it sounded like as soon as they got no counteroffer from Geno Smith, they just wanted to shuffle him out of there ASAP, which sure makes it sound like he made no attempt to get maximum value or even moderate value. And that lines up with the fact that we got a late third round pick in my mind. Like, you had some leverage over the Raiders. You did. You could have had leverage over the Raiders, and you decided not to use it. Maybe it's because you like Pete Carroll, but as a Seahawks fan, as a fan of this team, I have very little sympathy to that. So that's one thing he said that didn't sit well with me. If I were to point any one thing out, like maybe you had the opportunity to get a little more trade compensation for Geno. Maybe you had a chance to try to push back a little bit on the Raiders offering what is basically a crappy third round pick. But other than that, he said some things that I don't know. Like, we don't know exactly what kind of contract they offered Geno Smith or DK Metcalf. I get the sense that the contract that he offered those two players was not particularly competitive, not particularly strong, and I think that I feel like there was maybe such a big divide between what the players expected and what they were supposedly going to get that maybe that caused things to break down. Like, you at least have to get somewhat close. You have to give the impression that you're at least going to be able to get something in the ballpark of what you're looking for. And it feels like Schneider wasn't even there, but it it also feels like Schneider wanted them. Some people have suggested that he lowballed them as a way to basically disrespect them and push them out because he wanted them gone. That's not what he said anyway. Again, that I don't know if he would actually say that. That would be a really weird thing to say. But the point I'm trying to make here is that We um we just don't know what's true and what's not, and we never will. That's just how this stuff works. So again, I'm not going to break down every little thing he said, but that was the one thing that kind of stuck with me a little bit. And I can understand not getting full value for DK Metcalf because he requested a trade, and there were indications this was a little bit of a fire sale at that point in time after the Geno trade, but getting minimal value for Geno Smith, that I struggle with a little bit. And maybe you couldn't have gotten more, but you could have sat on this a little bit longer than you did. You could have pushed back a little bit. You could have tried to negotiate. The way this thing is described, it sounds like he didn't even try. And that's not doing what's best for this team. It's just not. Okay, so about 2 hours from now, I'm going to turn the stream on here on YouTube. It's going to be like the last few days. It's going to be an 8-hour stream. I'm going to take probably a couple of breaks at some point, of course. I'm going to have to eat lunch at the minimum, but I'm going to be on stream for at least 7 of those 8 hours, and we're going to talk through every NFL wide move. We're going to really focus in on anything the Seahawks do, and we'll see how things break down, and hopefully we at least get some activity. Even if we don't love the activity, let's at least get some stuff to talk about. Well, I'd rather do nothing than do something I hate, I guess, right? I guess no activity is better than negative activity, but I'd like to have something to at least talk about. I don't want to sit there for 8 hours and watch the team just sit on their hands. That would be also pretty tragic, I think, especially in this situation where we're a long way away from being able to say we're putting an appropriate team around our new quarterback. So that's really about it, guys. Thank you to BetUS for powering this video. I'll see you guys in a couple of hours. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. And yeah, that hopefully that's the end of that particular saga for me.